I, female 40, had my twins Evelyn, 21-year-old female, and Santos, 21-year-old male, at 19 with my then boyfriend Kevin, 42-year-old male. We got married, got part-time jobs, kept studying short careers, and with the help of our friends and parents, we were able to raise them. It was a lot of stress and hard work, but we were happy, and with time, we were able to buy our own house. We even thought about having more children, but I refused because I almost died at childbirth. I really thought Kevin was the love of my life, but I ended up discovering he had been cheating on me for a year, around 7 years ago. I was devastated, and I immediately chose divorce. He begged for forgiveness, but I refused and asked for a divorce. When he realized that he could have lost his children due to this, he managed to make it look like I was the one who cheated. He paid someone to tell them some fake stories, and my kids cut contact with me. They were furious, and they never let me explain. I swore I tried for months, really hard, but they refused to listen to me. My final straw was when my son Santos told me that I was dead to them and to leave them both the frick alone. I don't want to victimize myself too much, but I feel like I have to explain how it affected me. I went into depression, alcoholism, and even attempted unalived. I still survived, and I almost lost my license, but I didn't care at all. I was decided to end my life, and as dramatic as it sounds, I remember being on top of a roof. I was going to unalive myself, but my mom called me. I didn't respond, but she left a voicemail asking me why I was avoiding her and that she missed me. I realized how selfish I had been. I was too focused on my own pain and didn't think about the consequences. How my mom, who raised me alone as a single mother, gave me everything she had and loved me more than anyone would. I was furious with my children for what they did to me, for not believing me. But what about me? Anyway, after crying on the floor in the middle of nowhere for hours, I took a train to my hometown and confessed everything to my mother. I cried in her arms like a little baby, exactly like I used to cry in her arms when I was a child. I didn't realize how much I needed it. I stopped working for a couple of months. I got into therapy and rehab, but I did my best to help her around the house. I ended up meeting my now husband, Marcos, 41-year-old male. I got a job in my field, and we moved in together 3 years ago and adopted a child. We weren't planning on having children. He had none of his own, but he's a doctor, and he got really close to our daughter, Milagros, 12-year-old female, who lost her parents in an accident, and I did too. We realized we could give her a good life together, so we adopted her. I love her with all my heart, just as much as I love my biological kids. She's sweet, kind, smart, funny, and curious. And her presence has healed things I couldn't heal with therapy. Not that I'm using her to replace my Santos and Evelyn, but I think you can understand that. Long story short, Santos and Evelyn contacted me a couple of weeks ago. After insisting, I agreed to a meeting. They drove to my town, and I admit I wanted to cry when I saw them, but I kept my cool. I just sat there. I wanted to snap at them, but I thought that there was no point. They asked about how I was doing, but I ignored their questions and asked what they wanted. They explained how their father remarried to a horrible woman who treated them really badly, and how they found him drunk one night and admitted to how he lied about my affair, and how he was the one who cheated on me. They apologized and begged for another chance, and even though it was what I wanted for years, I just didn't respond. I didn't even look at them. I stayed in silence, staring at the table for seconds. I finally told them that it was no longer my problem, since according to them, I was dead. And maybe they should have thought things through before turning their backs on their mother without even letting them tell their side of the story. They kept crying and apologizing, but I stopped them. I'm going to translate what I said. I don't have time for this shoot. I have to pick up my daughter. And I left the money on the table. They were shocked to hear about my daughter, but I simply went to pick Milagros up. They kept trying to get in contact with me, but I ignored them. They showed up at my house and talked to my husband, and they were surprised by how nice Marcos was to them. I thought about the situation. I talked with my closest friends, mom and husband, and I came to the conclusion that I needed to make things right. I invited them to my house when I was alone with my husband, and I apologized for how I snapped at them. I told them I was sorry for how they were suffering, but I still wouldn't be able to forgive them. You'll see, I still feel a grudge and resentment towards them that I can't control, and I feel like it's not going to go away. I explained everything I went through after they cut contact with me, and they both started crying. I told them I wished it was different, but I couldn't trust them after they turned their backs on me so easily. And I don't think it's healthy to have them around me knowing my resentment towards them. They kept trying to change my mind, but I stood my ground. I gave them 2 envelopes full of cash for the years I missed, and I told them I loved them with all of my heart, and that wasn't going to change. I told them to take care of themselves, and that if they had any problems, they could contact their grandmother or my husband. But I wanted them both out of my life. They were hurt and tried to argue, repeating that they were sorry over and over, but I clarified that I wasn't going to change my mind and to leave my house. They showed me how little I meant to them, and no matter how much I loved them, I didn't want them in my life after what I went through because of them. They kept trying and trying, but my husband politely asked them to leave me alone. I admit, I cried on my husband's arms, but it was something I needed to do. Santos and Evelyn still can't accept my decision. They asked every single close person to me to convince me to reconsider, even my mom, who they ignored for years. My mom did snap at them. Of course, they're her grandkids and she loves them, but I'm her daughter, and that's another story. She wasn't nice to them, called them entitled, and said that after all they put me through, the least they could do would be to leave me alone and face the consequences of their actions. Anyway, some of my friends found out about this, and they're telling me that I'm overreacting. They're just kids who made a stupid mistake, and I know that, but that stupid mistake almost drove me straight to my death. I don't want to sound repetitive, but I just don't think I'll ever forget what I went through, and that's my main motive to cut them off. I don't think we can have a healthy relationship if I hold a grudge against them. I wish I didn't, but again, I can't control it. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You had to grieve for them as if they were dead. Grief is an ancient ritual that taps deep into your brain's neurochemistry and helps you form new relationships and continue living after people who were vital to you have died or disappeared in other ways, like this. It is completely understandable to me that you cannot turn the spigots back on and just start loving them again. For what it's worth, you can have a new, different, positive relationship with them in time. It won't be the same, but it can be warm and supportive, even if the deep trust and primal bond you used to have with them never surfaces again. It would allow you to be a part of their future children's lives and to still know your children. I strongly recommend you talk to a therapist about your deepest fears and hopes about a relationship with your children. A therapist can help you set boundaries and communicate some of your most complex thoughts as you navigate a relationship with them if you want one. Your kids are being very pushy right now because they are frantic to ease their consciences, so boundaries would be very good for you right now. You all have years ahead of you to make these choices. You don't have to do it now, but I hope you find a way to be in each other's lives. Comment 2. Not the idiot. However, your friends are also correct. Your kids were 14 when their world was turned upside down. They didn't know who to trust, nor should they have ever been in the position where they had to guess who was right. They haven't come to you asking for money. They took responsibility for their mistake. A mistake that was made at a time in their lives where their only real decisions should have been what haircut they should have, and are more or less begging for an opportunity to try to put things right. If it were me, I would set boundaries. Take a few weeks to get your head straight. Tell them you need to take things very, very slowly, and that it has to be completely on your terms. Tell them you may never be able to fully trust them due to what you went through. I might be in the minority, but I do not feel it is entirely fair to continue to blame a child who did not and should not have been expected to know any better. Please remember that they were also victims of what your ex-husband did. It does not excuse what you went through, but it is understandable as to why it happened the way that it did. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments and advice on my last post. It's been a tense couple of weeks since then, and I've got quite the update for you all. So, after the last time I spoke with Santos and Evelyn, things took an unexpected turn. They didn't take my decision to cut them off well, and they've been relentless in trying to get back into my life. But let me back up a bit and fill you in on some history that might explain why this is so complicated. You see, when I was with Kevin, he had this way of charming everyone around him. He was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. And when he turned that charm against me, making it look like I was the one who cheated, it was easy for everyone to believe him. I was left alone, fighting against a tide of lies. It took me years to rebuild myself, and Marcos was a huge part of that. He showed me what real love and trust looked like, and together we created a new life, one that included our sweet Milagros. Now, back to the present. Santos and Evelyn have been trying to contact me through every means possible. They've sent texts, emails, and even letters. But the most shocking moment came when I found them waiting outside Milagros' school. They wanted to talk to her, to explain who they were, and to try to build a bridge back to me through her. I was furious. How dare they involve my daughter in this mess? They knew nothing about her, about the trauma she went through losing her parents, and how hard we've worked to give her a stable, loving home. I confronted them right there in front of the school, and it was not pretty. I told them they had no right to just show up and disrupt Milagros' life like that. They pleaded with me, saying they just wanted to be a family again, but I couldn't hear it. Not after everything. The conflict didn't end there. Marcos, bless his heart, has been trying to be the voice of reason. He's always been the calm to my storm, and he suggested we sit down with a family therapist to try and work through some of these issues. I was hesitant, but I agreed, for Milagros' sake if nothing else. The therapy session was intense. Old wounds were reopened as Santos and Evelyn recounted their side of the story. They talked about how they felt abandoned by me after the divorce, how they were manipulated by Kevin, and how lost they felt when their stepmother entered the picture. They were looking for someone to blame, and I was the easiest target. But here's the thing. While I listened to them, I realized that the resentment I felt was like a wall between us. I was holding on to it so tightly, and it was keeping me from moving forward. I didn't say much during the session, but afterwards I broke down. Marcos held me as I cried out years of pain and anger. Despite the therapy, I still felt torn. Part of me wanted to forgive them, to try and be the mother they were now seeking. But another part of me was scared of being hurt again, scared of the resentment that still simmered beneath the surface. And then the situation escalated even further. Evelyn showed up at my house unannounced one evening. She was a mess, crying and begging for forgiveness. She said she understood if I couldn't be her mother again, but she just needed to know that I didn't hate her. That moment nearly broke me. I saw the little girl I once knew, the one who would come running to me after a nightmare, seeking comfort. I didn't know what to do. I told her I needed time, that I couldn't just erase the past and start over. She left, but not before telling me that she and Santos were considering moving to my town to be closer, to prove that they were serious about making amends. Now, I'm left with this huge decision hanging over me. My friends are divided. Some say I should give my kids a second chance, while others think I need to protect myself and Milagros from potential heartache. Marcos is supportive as always, but I can tell he's worried about the impact this is having on our family. I quit my job to care for his grandparents, but when his mom threatens my baby, we pack up and leave, finding peace far away. I, 25-year-old female, had to have a very serious conversation with my 28-year-old male fiancé about whether I can continue to stay with him under these conditions. My fiancé and I have both quit our jobs to become full-time caregivers for both his grandparents, 83-year-old female and 90-year-old male, on his mom's side. We get paid to do it, though it definitely wasn't enough for the amount of care his grandmother needed. Fiancé agreed it wasn't enough since she was completely bedridden. But they're his grandparents that practically raised him, so we did it regardless of the money. Both grandparents have always been grateful for everything we have done to help take care of them. His grandmother recently passed away due to a long list of medical issues. She was really on board with us having a kid and wanted to live to hold the child when the little one is born. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I absolutely love my fiancé, and I am happy to have been here for him every step of the way. But the living conditions aren't perfect. Imagine 70-plus years of stuff packed into boxes in a 2-story house that needs a lot of work done on it. His grandparents and mother were on board with us cleaning the place up, so that's what we have been working on. Through every step of the way, his mom is arguing that we should sell stuff instead of throwing it away or donating it because that's money you're throwing away, or that we threw away something of hers that she wanted to keep. We've asked her numerous times to come over and take a look at what she wants to keep, but she has refused to do so. All this is for context. I was pregnant last November and ended up having a chemical pregnancy, early miscarriage in December, but no one except me and my fiancé knew about it. I was heartbroken, but figured it was probably from stress. His grandmother took a turn for the worst at that time, and I was practically in tears every day. We tried again, and I'm now happily 6+ weeks pregnant. Fiancé is ecstatic and is looking forward to being a dad. Grandpa is also happy that he gets to be a great-grandpa. Fiancé refused to tell his mom since her mental stability is inconsistent. I respected this decision since every time he tried to ease her into it, she would go off about how the world is shitty and that no one should bring a kid into this world. He told her the day they took his grandmother off of life support, it was prior to them going to the hospital, since he was going to talk to his grandma about it when she was there. She took the news well and was happy about it. The following day, she comes over to spend some time with her father, but eventually came to talk to us, claiming that we should have told her since this child is a quarter of her and that we shouldn't tell anyone until we reach the 3-month mark. Pretty much a long slew of she is deeply hurt that she had to hear the news through fiancé telling grandma about it, and followed up with saying she had to hear the news from grandpa, then proceeded to say that her father is our cash cow and that we better take care of him and not commit elderly abuse since neither of us has a job. Fiancé cut her off and told her to stop yelling in front of me since he didn't want me to stress over it. They asked me to leave, which I happily did. She came up after talking with him and apologized to me, saying that it was all on him and that I need to do all the planning, telling me this kid is 1/4 of her, etc. I nodded and just left the subject alone because I didn't want to argue. Later, my fiancé and I talked about it alone, and he told me that on 2 separate occasions, she threatened to take custody of our child when it was born, saying that I was an unfit mother and that I'm lazy. She then proceeds to tell him that the courts would be in her favor since neither of us have a job. I can handle a lot of insults because I have thick skin and grew up with a very troubled past. My mom was a recovering addict, and my dad wasn't around all that much. I was pretty much raised by my grandmother on my father's side, who always told me, my parents aren't bad people, they just made a lot of poor decisions. I'm so grateful that she never kept me in the dark about them. But the one thing I will not stand for is anyone threatening to take my child from me. I love this little life that's growing in me so much already. I would do anything to protect it from anyone, even if it's family. I told my fiancé flat out she has one more time to say that, and I'm leaving for the safety of our child. He agreed and said to do whatever it takes, though he knows they are empty threats and that she's just looking for someone to be mad at. I told him, I do not care how mad at the world she is. She has no right to bring my unborn child into her delusional world. And if that means I have to cut his family out of our child's life to protect the little one, I will with no hesitation. He understands and agrees that if it comes to that, then I have to do it. He promised his grandparents that he would be there until the end for both of them, so I don't expect him to leave just because I do, though he has told me that he will if his mom continues this behavior. A part of me feels bad because his grandpa is so excited for this child that every day he asks me when the baby is going to be born. He has dementia, but this child is half of me and growing inside of me. I haven't told too many of my family members about this situation, but those I have are more than happy to take us in. I'm very close with my family because they knew what I went through growing up, and they are all so happy that I'm having a child despite my past. No one really thought that I would want kids. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Okay, if you are in the US, there is an agency called Legal Aid. Their fees are based on a sliding scale according to your income. It might behoove you to speak to them and start a preemptive strike against your future mother-in-law. If the grandparents raised your fiancé, that's a pretty good indicator that your future mother-in-law was an unfit parent. And that's a good thing to have on record if she ever attempts to take the child. At the very least, legal aid will be able to discuss options with you. Now, if she comes into that house and takes the child without permission, that's kidnapping. Quite frankly, that will put the law firmly on your side and get you a restraining order to keep her away from the house, as well as some jail time for her. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Ask her what kind of unfit parent she was since your fiancé was raised by his grandparents. Does she think the courts won't take into account that she didn't even raise her own kid? She's clearly insane, so keep her away from your child. She may have the run of the house, but you can set up a nursery sitting room where you can take the baby and bolt the door whenever she's around. She does not have the run of your child. And if she threatens to take your kid again, file a police report for the threat of kidnapping. That ought to shut her up. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. I really appreciated the support and advice. A lot has happened in the past 3 days, and I need to get this off my chest. So, after the last blow-up with my fiancé's mom, things took a turn for the worse. Remember how she accused me of being an unfit mother and threatened to take our child away? Well, she actually tried to follow through with that threat. She called Child Protective Services and reported us for neglect and potential abuse, all completely unfounded, of course. We were shocked. The caseworker quickly realized that the claims were baseless, especially since our baby isn't even born yet. But the stress of the situation was unbearable. My fiancé was livid. He confronted his mom, and it was the most intense argument I've ever witnessed. He reminded her of how she struggled with her own mental health and how he had always stood by her, even when she had her own run-ins with social services when he was a kid. He couldn't believe she'd turn on us like this, using the system that once caused her so much grief. Meanwhile, Grandpa's health started to decline rapidly. It's like he could sense the tension in the house. He's always been a quiet man, but he was the one who taught my fiancé how to fish, how to be patient, and how to be kind. Seeing him so frail and confused now, asking about the baby, and if the mean lady, as he referred to his daughter during her outbursts, was gone, broke our hearts. In the midst of all this, we discovered that my fiancé's mom had been hiding some of Grandpa's pension money. She claimed it was for emergencies, but the amount didn't add up. My fiancé had been handling their finances for years, and he never saw a dime of that money go towards anything for his grandparents. It was a betrayal that cut deep, considering how much we sacrificed to care for them. The tension in the house was palpable. I couldn't sleep, and my fiancé was constantly on edge. We had to make a decision for our future and our child's well-being. We decided to move out. My family, who knew the struggles I faced growing up, were ready to take us in. They understood the importance of a stable environment, especially since my own upbringing was anything but stable. But the hardest part was telling Grandpa. He had moments of clarity, and in one of those moments, we explained that we were moving out. He was confused at first, but then he held my hand, looked me in the eyes and said, "You do what's best for that baby." It was a moment of lucidity that I'll never forget. We started packing our things, and that's when we found it. A box of letters and photos that my fiancé's mom had stashed away. Letters from his grandmother to his grandfather during the war, photos of his mom as a child, memories that were meant to be cherished, not hidden. My fiancé was overwhelmed. He had been looking for these for years, and his mom never said a word. The move was tough. My fiancé struggled with leaving his grandpa, but we knew it was the right choice. We promised to visit, to make sure he was okay, but we couldn't live under the same roof as his mom anymore. As we were leaving, his mom had the audacity to ask for money. She said she was entitled to it because she was family. My fiancé, who had always been the peacemaker, finally stood up to her. He told her that family doesn't threaten to tear each other apart, that family supports one another. And with that, we left. It's been a joyride of emotions. We're staying with my aunt for now, and the peace is a welcome change. Grandpa calls every day asking about the baby, and we reassure him that we're all doing fine. My fiancé is looking for a new job, and I'm focusing on staying healthy for our little one. My ex wants to share our house sale profits with his mistress who harassed me, but I won't let her taunts break me. Now she's plotting revenge. Am I the idiot for not sharing my home sale profits with my ex's mistress? My ex, who is 33, and I, who is also 33, separated 5 years ago and now co-parent our 2 kids who are 12 and 8 years old. We were together for 12 years since high school. We recently decided to sell our home to eliminate our last financial tie. To give a little backstory, we purchased the home when we were together in an area far from his work, so I could go to school while he stayed behind in my parents' home for work, which was closer to his job, and he would commute to see the kids and I every weekend. The first few months were hard, to say the least, but we got through them, and my first semester back in college, by my 3rd semester, when I started taking my main classes for my major, which were very time-consuming for studying, he started acting distant until the day he said he no longer wanted to be in a relationship with me. Of course, I wanted to work on us and fix the relationship and try to remind him of our 5-year plan to finish school so he could then transfer over with us. He flat out refused, and I reluctantly agreed to give him space, hoping he would see that we were worth fighting for. Little less than a month later, I not only find out he is in a new relationship, but he started this new relationship with a manager of one of the stores he would go work at 5 months prior to us breaking up. To make matters worse, she not only knew of his relationship status, but would later go on to harass me with taunting messages, boasting that she was able to take him away with her cruel words. Their romance lasted a few months, but not without a not-so-surprise affair baby. For my mental health, I decided to ignore and not entertain any form of negativity and harassment from either party. I focused on my kids and finishing my studies. Fast forward to now, I have since graduated and am working as an RN, and we still co-parent, as we were able to focus on the kids' happiness and well-being. I have even let him bring his daughter to my home to meet my sons and spend time with my ex, since he cannot take her to my parents' home. At the end of the day, I told him it is his home as well, and I know how much he missed out on her life. I have made it clear to my ex that I do not want to get involved in any parental capacity because I am not her parent, nor do I wish to have that kind of relationship with his daughter or have a close relationship with her mother. I will be civil because at the end of the day, he shares kids, and my kids will be part of their dad's life, as she would be. My boys were happy to meet their sister, although some concerns were raised with my oldest since he did not know about his father's affair, and they welcomed her to our home. Fast forward to now, we recently just went into escrow, and we are going to have good profits from the sale. Today, he threw a bombshell at me when he asked if we can share some of our profits with the mother of his child to help her out because she's a single mom of 3. Not only was I shocked by the news, but by the audacity to ask me to share the profits of a place that was my home with my kids, and a place I envisioned our life together, with a person who helped destroy that dream and taunted my inbox with messages for months. I outright said no, and he got upset and said that it is for his daughter, and she has every right to that money. I tried to reason with him and explained how hurtful and insensitive his request is, but he refuses to see it. I asked him if we could talk to some neutral parties to gain perspective, but he flat out refused and couldn't look me in the eye to say why. So I told him I would come to Reddit and ask, "Am I the idiot?" Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. If he wants to split his share of the profits, he can. If his daughter is so important to him, he chose to have an affair and chose to leave. She has no ownership in the house, nor does she have any right to it. Stand your ground on this, girl. Do not let him make you feel bad. You earned this. Comment 2. Not the idiot. She is entitled to nothing. Tell him he is more than welcome to give her your half. However, she will not get a penny from me. Consequences of not only being a homewrecker, but being cruel and taunting you. Now, for the update. Hey Reddit, back with an update on the home sale profits drama with my ex and his mistress. Buckle up, because these past 3 days have been a roller coaster. So, after I posted here, things got even more heated. My ex, let's call him Jake, decided to bring up the topic again, this time in front of the kids. Big mistake. Our oldest, who's already dealing with the whole new sister situation, got really upset. He couldn't understand why his dad would even consider giving money to the woman who caused so much pain. Now remember how I mentioned that Jake used to stay at my parents' place for work convenience? Well, turns out, during those times, he wasn't always the hard-working, devoted family man I thought he was. My mom, bless her soul, decided it was time to spill some tea. She caught him sneaking out late at night a few times, but didn't want to stir the pot, since we were already going through a rough patch. Back to the present, Jake's reasoning for sharing the profits is that his daughter's mother, let's call her Missy, is struggling financially. But here's the kicker. Missy has been bragging on social media about her new designer bags and shoes. So, where's the struggle, right? I confronted Jake about this, and he had the audacity to say that maybe she's just good at finding deals. Yeah, right. I wasn't born yesterday. I told him that if he's so concerned about his daughter's well-being, he should manage his own finances better instead of dipping into mine. The argument escalated, and in the heat of the moment, Jake let slip that Missy had been pressuring him to ask me for the money. Apparently, she feels entitled to it since her daughter is his child too. I was livid. This was the same woman who sent me those taunting messages, and now she wants a piece of my hard-earned stability? I reminded Jake of the time when he first left, how I had to juggle school and raising our boys without his support, how I had to scrape by while he was off playing house with Missy. I told him that I worked my butt off to get where I am today, and I won't let him or Missy take that away from me. Jake didn't take that well. He accused me of being heartless and not thinking about his daughter's future. But I stood my ground. I told him that our agreement was to sell the house and split the profits for our boys' future, not for Missy's shopping sprees. The next day, Jake tried a different tactic. He came over, all apologetic, saying he understood my point of view. But then he tried to guilt-trip me by talking about how his daughter doesn't have the same opportunities as our boys. I almost caved, guys. Almost. But then I remembered all the pain and betrayal, and I just couldn't do it. To make matters worse, my youngest overheard this conversation and asked me if his sister was poor and if that's why Daddy wanted to give her money. I had to explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes adults make complicated decisions, and it's not his job to worry about these things. So, here we are, 3 days later, and the situation is still unresolved. Jake is giving me the silent treatment, which honestly is a bit of a relief. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Missy has been suspiciously quiet, and I have a nagging suspicion that she's plotting something. I'm trying to stay strong for my boys, but this whole ordeal is taking its toll. I never imagined that selling a house could lead to such a mess, but I guess when it comes to Jake and Missy, I should have expected nothing less. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.